Hey everyone, this is Jack and Jill over here,
Hello.
and we're back for another podcast. What are we talking about today?
I'm not sure. What did you want to talk
Well, we
about?
didn't have anything written down, but I was going to tell the audience first because I have an abusive wife. She told me that I have to go and smoke weed before this podcast, and I accidentally smoked DMT instead. Well, I smoked weed out of a pipe that had DMT in it. And I had a very interesting experience. And I think I figured out how to get to that world through meditation. So I'm going to try that in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see where it goes.
What kind of technique is it?
Um, well, I have to perfect it still, so I have to practice it. But it's
Will you share with us once you perfect your technique?
no. Once you get to a cool place, you have to close the doors behind you, Duh. No, of course I'll share. But I don't know if it's going to work yet, but it seemed to have worked quite well because it's an interesting experience. I didn't actually expect to smoke DMT. There was just some residue in the pipe, and I took a hit, and I was like, "Oh, this is different." And I was like, "Oh, damn it!" But I don't want to, have a trip right now. I have important podcasts to do. So
I could smell that all the way here, actually.
yeah, well, so then, it wasn't a very large amount, so I was kind of like in that in between world, and I went there, and it's always the standard DMT kind of procedure where it goes into this world with linear graphics, essentially. If you remember video games from like the 1980s, where instead of fully kind of Tron, like if you've seen the really old Tron, where everything was drawn with bright, colorful lines on a black or white background, depending on whatever the setting and such. That's kind of like the beginning of the DMT world, and then from there it opens up wider and wider and wider, and you get to experience different things, like being separate from your body and stuff like that. So it's something that you really need to experience. But that very first part, getting to those colorful lights and then being able to actually look past them and go into that world is that's the doorway. And after the experience, I tried to meditate and try to get to the same area. And you can, I found, if you concentrate very deeply on your breath, while at the same time, when you normally close your eyes, you see kind of colorful, images, sometimes linear drawings kind of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just something that happens naturally when you that's just your brain basically misfiring, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we think, right? So there is a way to start concentrating on that, where you try to keep everything else out of your mind, and you concentrate on two things. You concentrate on your breath, but there's only so much concentration you can really devote to your breath before it becomes pointless. And then the rest of your mind, you concentrate on those patterns that you see that your brain is just auto-generating or whatever it might be, right? And you look for them, and you try to look through them to get to like the static. There is some static underlying these lines, right? And then you just try to follow it, and then with practice, and I'll try to practice it some more to see if I can figure out a better method like to describe it. But with practice, it seems like you can at least get to those gates, those DMT gates.
I wish I could see your brain.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could, record it.
When I was young, I participated in a meditation group, and we would meditate with music, usually meditating with the third eye, focusing on the third eye, which is right between your eyebrows, basically. And you would get some kind of like DMT effect, but I never got too many gates.
Well, it's not a gate per se.
I did get patterns. So when, we started experimenting with these hallucinogens, I was familiar with this sensation. But
Yeah,
the
so
thing,
you'll see patterns,
right?
but then the gate appears when you see that the patterns start to make some kind of sense. So that's why you keep concentrating on the patterns.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I get those patterns when I rub my eyes, and I think when I was a little kid, I would get more patterns compared to now. Um, I wonder what they are. You said that they're brain misfiring.
Well, as we know now, actually, yeah, your eyeballs themselves is actually it's a lobe of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So both of your eyeballs are actually lobes of your brain. They're not a separate organ. It's just a portion of your brain that protrudes through your skull,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, so it's not a separate organ per se. It's literally part of your brain, and it has neurons inside your eyeball. And those neurons fire. So, I mean, when you rub your eyes, it's just a bunch of neurons just firing all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
But inside your eye, and then it goes into your cortex. But when you're meditating, it's just literally those same neurons receiving very low kind of like background, essentially. It's kind of like the hiss on a microphone,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you turn down the microphone, or if you turn up the gain on the microphone all the way to the top, and then you just put it in a completely quiet room, you hear that hiss in the back, right?
Like I can hear now.
Yeah, like you can hear in the headphones right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's the visual cortex just basically hissing, right? But then you start seeing those patterns, and those patterns cannot be part of the visual cortex. That's actually data in the matrix, so to speak, or data in the random pattern of your cortex vibrating and hissing.
Mm.
Your visual cortex.
Taking it back to the DMT experience, do you ever have a falling effect like Alice in Wonderland, where if you let go, you're falling through a deep, hole?
Yeah, I've experienced it today. So today I also found two interesting parts to it. First, it's something that scares you because you're out of control. Like, so DMT can be scary because you lose complete control of it, and especially if you don't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you don't expect it, you're like, oh, I don't want to go there right now. But then there you are, and you stay in most control, especially here since I didn't take that much of a dose, right? But when you're in it, you realize that there's like two directions, and if you go down, it gets darker, and if you go up, it gets brighter and
Mm-hmm.
lighter in that experience. And it's a very
Oh, what do you mean by going up and down?
you
Is there-
literally
is-
think like I'm going down or I'm going up, and as you
Oh, I
think,
see.
you actually do. A lot of it is you separate from your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you start talking to yourself, and you start talking. You develop different personalities and stuff in your brain. And I don't want to go too deeply in that into that for now. But for just the whole idea of going up or going down, you really need to go. I guess it's okay in either directions as long as you kind of let it happen, because the DMT is kind of taking you there, right?
And it's very fast.
It's very fast. It's about 10 minutes or so. But
I've never gone past this sensation of falling. I've had this sensation of falling, and I stopped it. I opened my eyes and I was like, I'm not falling.
so the
couldn't
sensation
let
of falling
go.
instead can be overwritten, I found. First of all, you have to concentrate on your breath, and you have to keep breathing. But then you can actually play with your breath. Like, you can stop your breath and then see how fast your body wants to restart. And
Well, you're already feeling your entire body.
Yeah.
When you're under the influence of DMT, you're feeling things that are inflamed, things that are in pain, things.
Yeah, your senses go up dramatically. But I think what's important is when you're falling, it seems like you can override that, because today I was doing that and kind of going up and down. And I was going up and then I was going down, just playing with it, just to see what happens, because I knew it wasn't a large enough dose to actually lift off. So, and I found that, yeah, you can control it pretty well, more or less, just by thinking about it and it's not like positive and negative thoughts. Actually, it doesn't seem like there's anything negative about the down, because down looks scary and dark, but nothing bad really happens. It's just different, it seems like.
Maybe the sensation of just being in
Something
pitch
worth explaining.
blackness, and pitch blackness is and out of
You're
control
exploring.
is very unsettling.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. It was a little interesting, but I didn't get a negative vibe from one direction or the other, basically. But what I did figure out, other than some personal ideas that I had, what I did figure out from this is that if I get there on my own, I think it's going to be a far more interesting experience because I'm generally that kind of person that just doesn't like roller coasters, doesn't like being out of control in any shape or form, and this is not an ideal type of uh, thing for me. Like I have to explore this as opposed to being shown things, and everybody's different, right? I'm like that in real life as well. So I think if I get there on my own, I think it'll be a very interesting exploratory experience.
You know, a writer who writes about these sort of like trippy experiences. It's that Carlos
Yeah,
Castaneda
Carlos
guy.
Castaneda. Yeah,
Yeah, he writes about these weird ayahuasca or DMT inspired. Are they?
I
Like,
think it's whole ayahuasca in his case, but yeah, he lived with Indians, so more likely than not. I actually
and
haven't
his
read much
books are
about him.
so nonsensical that um, anyone who's looking to get the DMT experience without actually going under the influence should check it out because it's pretty damn nonsensical.
Well, the problem with the experience is that it depends because everybody tries to explain it in their own words. Though the meaning can be the same, but the communication of the meaning is very different from person to person, right? So somebody who approaches it with a very mystical kind of attitude because they study mysticism and all this other stuff, they will derive a lot of mysticism out of this experience.
Mm-hmm. And
And
is that what that Carlos Castaneda
it seems like
fellow
that's what he's going with,
derived?
right? Yeah.
Because
And
I actually know absolutely nothing about the author other than I cracked open a book. I think it was like Electric something,
mhm.
The Electric Sheep or something.
Yeah, I haven't really read much of his books. I just know of him. And but the point that I'm trying to make is his experience is entirely valid, and his way of describing it is also entirely valid for him. But I think I would prefer to read an examination of the phenomenon from someone who's much more scientifically minded, because I think that would communicate better with my brain. So basically, um, maybe with somebody who's very mystically orientated, he connects better with those people.
Mm-hmm.
But I would connect much better with somebody who is like a scientist or an explorer who can more practically approach this,
Mm-hmm.
not with like, oh, and then I have a shamanic experience, but more of like, okay, you need this mixture and this mixture, or this is how you meditate, and this is how you breathe, and this is where you go, and this is where you turn, and here's everything I learned about this world in the most objective way I can deliver it to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And maybe that's going to be inaccurate as well, because from when I am in that world, it's hard to explain this world. Like for instance, today I had an interesting experience where I was just exploring this body, and I could disassociate with this body, and I had this. It wasn't an imagination, but it was more um, like as if I was in a different ship where maybe like not a ship, I don't know, in a different realm where I was controlling this body, and I was just controlling my breath, and I was like, oh well, I mean the body will override and try to breathe when it needs to, but for now I'm not going to breathe, I'm just going to think and do things. And then the body tried to breathe, and then I was like, no, we're going to override this breathing part, and because we're still thinking, and I was talking to somebody else. I wasn't really talking, I was communicating with somebody else who felt like they were really part of like a committee that runs this body.
Mm-hmm.
And not an aggressive committee in a way where it's like, oh, different people with different opinions, but it was like different versions of me operating this body that's not really me, like when you achieve that full separation. And then
Were
somebody,
they quiet partners or were they kind of
No,
like.
they were quite. They don't. No. They were like one of them was like, so are we letting go of this body because it felt like we have many others,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then somebody else, it felt like the most closest version of me said like, oh no, we still have much to explore here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is like, okay, well then start breathing then. And then I was like, okay, fine, let's engage that function. And then it just continued on, right? And then my bodily function started to increase, and then the committee was like, okay, that's it. And then I kind of departed from the committee and rejoined with identifying myself with this body and myself.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this experience is very valuable to you, and not just to you, but people in general? Should everyone do some kind of psychedelic in order to open up their minds and think of themselves differently?
It's something that we need to explore in a highly scientific way. I would really love to explore this with people who are incredibly emotionally stable, who will approach it from the perspective of literal exploration, as if we're going to a different continent or a different planet or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And try to remember, somebody who will try to, like, for instance, this time around, I actively said that I'll try to remember everything. And in order to remember everything, I realized I have to verbalize everything, not verbally, but in my head verbally.
Mm-hmm. So
Start
you
to
have to narrate
you have to
your
narrate the
journey.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had the thought that, oh, but why am I doing that, right? And then the response was that, well, I need to understand this
Mm-hmm.
because there's nothing wrong with trying to communicate this to others.
Otherwise, you're just passively observing.
Yeah, otherwise you just passively observe it.
Uh-huh.
Things happen, but the things that don't make sense, your brain has a tendency to just dismiss unless you verbalize it and describe it to yourself in such a way that it repeats. It basically has to echo in your brain in order to really settle in, I think.
Why do you think people with schizophrenia and emotional instability don't benefit from this drug?
Well, we don't know if they benefit or not from this drug, but people who have a tendency to maybe become schizophrenic have a tendency to go very haywire in this drug, right? Their schizophrenia gets much worse.
Mm.
So my thought process about that, is that schizophrenia is like poor isolation.
Poor isolation of what?
Of channels
In your brain?
in your body. So let me give you an analogy. Let me give you an analogy of a radio, right? Most people don't maybe own radios anymore, but if you ever remember like the old style analog radio, the ones that you tune and you have a little wheel that you twist and that tunes the radio, right?
To find a frequency.
To find a particular frequency. Well, not very good radios, ones that have poor gain and coarse, frequency adjustment, and also don't have particularly good electronics in them, right? They crossbleed a lot. So if you have two stations close by, it's very difficult to tune in to where you just hear the one station really clearly and don't have a lot of noise coming in from another station if they're positioned really close to each other, right? Like maybe a local station and a more powerful like regional station on AM spectrum, right? So a high-end, high-quality radio, or just a decent radio, right? You will be able to tune in into station number 1, and you can tune in to station number 2, and maybe they're very close to each other, but you're still good to go. A person with schizophrenia, what I think is happening is their body has just like a really bad tuning connection. And when the DMT creature is trying to, their body transmits very dirtily. And the DMT creature is trying to tune into their body to understand them, right? They get cross-chat from like other creatures that might be connecting with other bodies. And you get cross-chat of personalities and cross-chat of like ebb and flow of information.
Mm-hmm.
between different channels. And I think when you take DMT, basically it shuts down your tuning ability and you just detune and just like receive the whole world. You see the whole world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and then when the DMT goes away out of your bloodstream, you narrow in on your own persona, on your own ego
Mm-hmm.
that stays in your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think with schizophrenic people, they're kind of already kind of really bad at tuning into their own ego,
Mm-hmm.
and they keep cross tuning between other egos. And when you introduce DMT to it, you might break that system completely.
Mm.
That's completely
Is it?
uneducated
Is it? Is
analysis,
it?
but that's a
Do you
hypothesis.
think that would be irreparable?
Well, this is why I think this is a wonderful world to explore in a very scientific way,
Mm-hmm.
with many people doing it at the same time, sharing information afterwards, writing it down first, like, having a report afterwards and examining it and trying to get to certain areas, sharing techniques on how to get to certain areas and then go past that, because we know that at least the first couple of steps are very similar for pretty much everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like it's not just happening in your head. It seems like it has a very specific procedure. Now maybe it's entirely in your head, right?
Right.
But I'm willing to bet anything. Like, I believe this more than I believe anything else in the world, that it's a physical phenomenon and there is something to it. And I think it's worth studying in an organized way.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to see if I can get there without the use of any additional drugs, because that opens up the possibility of studying it in a lot more controlled way, because you can come in and come out on your own terms, essentially.
You know what I thought was kind of interesting? If you're at all familiar with, I don't know, Eastern philosophy and the chakras, the 7 chakras, I wonder if the 7 chakras was derived as portals that somebody discovered. Like through the human body, if you focus in a different area of the body, you can enter through a different world. What do you think?
So if you focus on a different area,
So there are like 7. There's your third eye, there's your heart chakra, there's your solar plexus chakra, there's one at your tailbone, there's one in your groin, I think. I'm not sure.
I would be willing to bet that that's more associated with just nerve bundles in your body.
Hmm.
If you look at your nerve bundles as maybe antennas
Mm-hmm.
for receiving the signals from the beyond,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, maybe that's what it is. What I'm also gathering, the more I do it, is really you're quite limited. Like, your experience is quite limited by the body itself. So the body does its own body thing. The body lives the life that it's meant to live, right? The whole argument about no free will, that you do, or your body rather does, whatever it would have done, no matter what, because that's the stimuli that it receives, and it's just a dumb machine that just receives stimuli and responds to stimuli, right?
Yeah, so we're limited by our physical body.
Yeah. So it's like the whole thing where we know that, for instance, your political affiliation is very strongly genetically linked. Your IQ is genetically linked. All these things are very strongly genetically linked. Not in terms of apparently groups at all, but in terms of individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So individual families,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, would have high IQs.
Mm-hmm.
And then some other individual families might have low IQs, or propensity to be tall, propensity to be short, propensity to be blonde, propensity to be green-eyed, etc., or brown-eyed and
Mm-hmm.
dark-skinned. So, those are propensities that are in large, like race divisions. But if you think about what's a race? A race is really just a family that lived in a particular area for a really long time. Because if you think about it, at some point, human beings we know a human population has devolved to something as small as just a couple hundred people. Like under 5,000. We think it's anywhere between 500 to 5,000, all concentrated on a single in a single area, and then we spread from that to all over the place. So really,
Right. And we
it's
were,
really just families who left,
yeah.
and there's like the Caucasian family and the black family that stayed behind, and the Asian family that went off and propagated and then settled the continent. Like we all come back to the same like tribe pretty much eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's genetic differences in us, and those genetic differences basically define, and plus your environment, of course, defines how you're going to react at any one moment. So, as a DMT creature, you're really kind of more or less in for a ride in this body.
Do DMT creatures get to select the body that they embody?
I have no idea. I can't tell one way or the other. It seems like this time around I selected to continue this journey, so maybe. I don't know. I don't understand that world very well at all.
If you had opted to not continue to live in this body, you would have died?
Well, my body would. It seemed like at that point I was completely separate from my body. My body would just stop existing, but I think I would have continued to exist. I mean, my body wouldn't stop existing.
Well, your body would.
It would just stop functioning.
Stop functioning, yeah.
It'll continue to exist until it's been.
It biodegrades.
Until it biodegrades.
I don't know what's wrong with my voice. I feel like there's like a phlegm in the back of my throat, and
well, drink some water.
is not helping.
Drink lots of gulps of water. It's not your throat, it's your body's throat, and it's failing. Maybe it's time to give up and get a better model. But I
don't know. I've been trying to do that since I was 5.
Well, I was also experiencing. I got this experience several times during this, so it doesn't seem so morose to people. I get this feeling in every case that no matter what, that this particular like. I got a feeling that I'm exploring a particular part of a maze or puzzle that is like this world, for instance, right? I don't know. I'm saying for instance because I'm not entirely sure. It's just a feeling, like a feeling that this body is a tool that I am using for the purposes of exploring this world, and and I got this feeling that the reason why I said no. No, we're not done with this particular tool yet. It felt like it's because, it's not trivial to get to even the position that I am right now. It's kind of like playing a video game, right? You're playing a video game and you're playing a character, and maybe you know a particular level, but you fuck up on a few like points on the level, like you didn't get all the treasure or something like that. Let's say you're playing Doom and you missed a few things, or your health is a little too low, and you're thinking to yourself like, should I just end this character right now, and just start over and just repeat it really quickly, or should I just keep going? Well, what I've noticed that's important is that no, that this is a pretty pretty far along, and I'm even if I'm not doing perfect, I'm doing the right things, and then like I should continue exploring with this particular character, so to speak. That there is more to explore in this world. Because I don't know if you.
That's a very powerful statement. You're saying, I'm okay. I should not reset. And a lot of people who are depressed or who are sad and disappointed with their lives would be like, time to reset. This is a great opportunity.
Well, I think...
Or at least I would be.
I think maybe for depressed people, it would be something to experience, to at least try, maybe with the supervision of psychiatrist, perhaps. Because I think what they would find is that it would help them with their depression. In the sense that I think it will highlight meaning in their life where they think there is none. Because I haven't felt like there was anything special about my particular existence. I just felt that it was important in the sense that, we don't know where it's going to go. And it can go to a very cool and positive place. or to a really negative place. So it almost felt like maybe it would be a different situation if, I was inhabiting a body that was like 6 months away from dying from something. And then maybe uh, I would find a lot of relief maybe in the same experience because it would convey to me like, well, you're almost at the end, and then we'll reset with something better, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I think that's the message that I would get at that point. Right? So I think it's actually a very beneficial experience, no matter which portion, stage of your life is. Because if your life is really, really terrible and you should kill yourself, I think this will tell you that like just let life finish it off for you and then just reset automatically, right? And if your situation is such that there's just like no hope, maybe it will tell you that like yeah, maybe this is like a good. How about this? I'll tell you this. Like if you can go in there and your life is really not worth living, I think you will be able to just stop breathing and then you can die peacefully. Or your body can die peacefully and you can die without fear because you will reset in the world where you'll continue to exist.
Do you think this is how really old people die? The ones that die peacefully in their sleep.
I think so. I think that's one of the reasons why I really want to get there without any drugs because I really want to have the option to at some point in my life be able to go in there and just say, okay, this is the last breath I'm going to take, and then just take it and then just shut it off and just stay there.
Do you think the longer you live, the more this option becomes available? Like,
I think this option was available to me today. I could have done it. I just didn't want to. But I'm just saying, if I wanted to, I think I could have overridden the automatic response. It's actually quite interesting. You can do it by shooting, not shooting, using a very small dose of DMT, and you can override a lot of your autonomic responses in your body. Like for instance, if you do some DMT and then you do yoga, for instance, you can stretch a lot deeper, and you can feel where the automatic protection system kicks in that says, no, 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 this is as far as you can stretch.
mm-hmm.
And then you can actually mentally override that protection and allow your muscles to stretch to their full length.
Mm-hmm.
The danger there is that by the time you get to the full length of the muscle, there's no more give. So if you try to push it past that, it will still allow you to do that, but you will be literally ripping muscle off of your body, and you can easily do that if you choose to.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't, you're not going to. You can just go to the limit. You'll feel where the limit is. You'll feel that this is the end. This is literally how long the fibers of the muscles are. There is no more stretch there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can contract back. But you will definitely pass the actual soft limit. I call it the software limit of your muscles by at least 30 to 40%. It's actually like, if you want proof that this is not just in your brain, do just a little bit of DMT and then just see how much deeper you can stretch and how much deeper your muscles can stretch.
I've got to try that. It sounds awesome.
So you have to be in tune with your body. You have to start to learn how to isolate your muscles. I've been always relatively good at that, and I'm trying to do better and better, where you can actually isolate individual muscles of your body, individual ab muscles. Like everybody can like tighten their abs, but you get really good when you can start rolling your abs from the bottom of your tummy up to the top and then back down, and then try to isolate it to the left and to the right side. I still can't do it very effectively. And then when you can actually get to the individual muscles, you can do that only when I'm extraordinarily high. Mm-hmm. If I smoke a shit ton of weed, I can get to the point where I can actually highlight the individual muscles on my abs and tighten them and release them individually. That's a really interesting experience. So your body has an enormous amount of control over itself. It's just most of the time it's on autopilot.
Right.
And you can pull it out of that autopilot.
It takes conscious effort to tap into those muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of hard because I can't tap into strange muscles. or every muscle that I would want to tap into.
It takes a lot of practice.
Like, for example, you can tap into what? Your ears?
I can move my ears. I can move my nostrils,
Yeah.
open them up and down.
Most ordinary people can't tap into their ears.
Yeah, I can tap into my left ear more so than I can tap into my right ear. My right ear is a little weaker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. But I can also tap into the three glute muscles. That's because I ripped one of them, so I was exercising them in the past, and now I am able to separate between the gluteus maximus, medius, and minimus, or whatever the fuck the last one is. Like the three of them.
Medius, minimus, and maximus. Yeah.
And then there's the minimus is the tiny little one in your groin kind of almost area, and then you have the medius, and then the maximus is the outside one, the big one that goes all the way up down to your thigh, so to speak. Nah, not quite, but
do you get a lot of cross linkage? Like, for example, when I try to move my big toe, I get not only my big toe to move, but I get the toe next to it to move as well.
yeah, that's something you have to work on. Like, you have to separate them in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that is mechanical too,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that they're just linked by skin and tissue, the
Mm-hmm.
toes themselves, and they're not as mobile as your fingers, of course.
Yeah, well, your brain devotes a lot of power to your hands.
Yeah, your brain has way more connections in your hands, but also just the mechanical setup of your hands is a little different. I think some of your toes are even fused together. I don't remember which ones. Some of those muscles like are really literally wide together, so you can
wired together. Yeah.
like they literally look like a letter Y, where it's like it has one on one side and two on the other side. I think I can still move them separately. Let me see. I can move my pinky. I can move my big toe separately. I can somewhat move my index toe separately, but not really. And then the other two are kind of wired together.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed.
So yeah, I guess in your hand, no, in my hand they're pretty nicely separated. It depends. The other day I was recording some videos and I was showing somebody how to do something, and I was using both my feet and my hands to do it, just because I needed to like press some levers on the bottom, and I was just using my feet. I was like, on the video when I was editing, all you see is like my hands, and then you have this other thing come in and look exactly like a hand because it's grabbing a screwdriver and picking it up and passing it to me. I was like, oh, that's just my foot.
Crazy.
I usually do that when I'm by myself, so I was doing it on a video, and kind of subconsciously I forgot that happened. That was kind of funny. Anyways, so that was my experience with DMT, completely unpredictable, or predicted, so to speak, or unplanned, I should say. But interesting.
Do you think if under the influence of DMT you can imagine yourself being somebody else? Like if you're super unhappy with the life that you've been given. Well, we know that using meditation you can imagine yourself being somebody else than you are. You can imagine, who you can be, or who you can become.
Well, to an extent, yeah. But to another extent, I don't think you really imagine it. You can jump into another life. And you can concentrate on it. It's still your life. You like, I'm convinced when I'm in that world that I have many lives active. This just happens to be one of them, so to speak.
So there is like a mastermind puppeting multiple puppets.
Kinda, but not really.
Is this body just like a puppet?
It's not a puppet. It's an experience.
Yeah, like a more sophisticated puppet. It could be an AI.
I don't think I have much say as the DMT creature. I don't think I have much say in what this body does, or thinks, or feels. I'm just here to experience things.
Mm-hmm.
So
In a
the
way,
experience, it's like there's a part of me that says these words, and there's a part of me that experience these words, and the part of me that says these words is trying to understand them in its own primitive way, but the part of me that experiences these words is not here.
hmm in a way, the way that you describe this DMT experience makes me feel like everything has already happened. There is nothing new underneath the stars. The body that you have lives a life that has been predestined. You live in
But not pre-explored and not pre-experienced, I think. I think
hmm
you're right. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's not pre-experienced or yeah, pre-experienced. By that, what I mean is, yes, I do very much believe that the life that I have has already happened. Like if there is a concept of time outside of this realm, it's already happened, right? But I believe it's like a maze. This is why I keep saying that it feels like an exploration of a maze, right?
hmm
I believe that this life is like a maze. I'm living this life to find something. I'm not
hmm
really sure what. Maybe just to experience it. Maybe just to explore this world. Imagine it's like an enormous maze that you're never going to solve, but you'll map it so the future generations can solve it, maybe.
hmm
It's kind of like that, right? So imagine yourself as a map maker who's making a map of this realm and of this time period that you live
hmm
in. That's how it feels like. So you're the map maker and you just get onto a ship. It's not even a ship that you're redirecting. It's maybe a merchant ship and you just sit there day by day and your only job is just to make a map and to really live this world and account for this world. You're not there to trade. You're not there to, imagine this is like 1800s or 1700s, like a trader ship, right? You're not there to make business deals. You're not there to protect them from pirates. You're just a passenger who sits there, makes your map, and accounts the experience. That's how I feel that we are in this world. So yeah, it's like the map maker. He's making a map of the world, but the world already exists,
hmm
right?
hmm
Is he creating the world by mapping it? No, but he's creating the access to the world by mapping it.
hmm
So maybe this realm is something that's generated but not explored. And we're
hmm
exploring it right now. And maybe exploring this realm to its full potential is the true meaning of life.
But the characters have already been written and they just get recycled over and over again.
Well, I don't think there are characters because the characters themselves, yeah, well, you're right.
I think what you're leading me to believe is that there are characters and these characters have been written by genetics, by whatever, and the experience has not been written for them, but they certain patterns repeat.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's imagine a different analogy, not an analogy, different explanation. Imagine if it was a simulated world, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in the simulated world, you have so many, so much matter that you're simulating, so to speak, right? And then you create the universe and you simulate the universe, and you run through its entire existence from the Big Bang in the beginning, which wasn't really a bang, it was more of a quick expansion. Let's call it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So from the Big Bang or the quick expansion to the to whatever happens at the end of the universe, we think that maybe we contract back, maybe we expand to the point where it just becomes complete. I suspect that it's more like we expand to the point where it just becomes completely unobservable anymore and just disappears into nothingness, and then we try again. But maybe like all the permutations of that universe have already been calculated, and now they're just sitting there. But you still have to explore it,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's kind of like if an artificial intelligence designed the video game. Yeah, all the outcomes of the video game and all the characters have already been designed. So still somebody has to play it in order for it to have a purpose.
Okay, but that also kind of hints at the fact that maybe not every character's life is important, and some of them can just die.
That's probably true.
No,
Yeah. Well, people die every day.
and people do die every day.
People do die, but that doesn't mean that the life is not important. The continuation of the well, important because why would you call it important, right?
You did something super interesting for a lot of people.
Yeah, but why does that even matter? Maybe like think about it this way: what if the entire
Well, so
point?
you can move the world along.
But what if you move it in the wrong direction?
But you can certainly do that too.
See, that's the thing. We don't know. It's like that old parable, the Chinese parable
Remind me.
about the horse and the guy who breaks his leg.
Mm.
Okay. So the parable is that the guy is like a young guy is riding a horse. I'm paraphrasing. It's probably horrible and it's probably completely wrong. So look it up. But it has something to do with horses and people. So the guy's riding a horse and he falls off the horse and he breaks a leg,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the elderly, so somebody runs off and is like, "Oh my God, what terrible luck! You broke your leg," right? And then the elder says, "Oh well, we will see." And then the next spring comes. And during the next spring, the army rolls by the town. This is in China, and the army would just roll by every spring and just collect young men to conscribe to the army,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they conscribe like a bunch of young men from the town, but they don't take this one because this one has still a limp leg, a broken leg. That's healing, yeah, but it's not healed up yet. So they don't take him, and he gets to stay back in the town, and people are like, "Oh, what good luck that you broke your leg," And the elderly says, "Oh, we will see." And then something else happens. I think they get attacked by the Mongols, and then the guy dies. And it's like, "Oh, well, I guess it was bad luck after all." But like you don't know what you don't know. You don't know if it's going to lead to something positive, something negative. A life completely benign or a life completely unknown can still be lived and discover some amazing things about the human existence that are, I don't know, essential for understanding this world,
Hmm.
right? But at the same time, maybe what's really essential for understanding this world is for us to get off this planet and get into the outer space to understand the rest of this universe.
Maybe. Outer space seems so empty.
It is empty and it is
Well,
far away.
We live in a very nice planet, objectively speaking.
Well, it's nice to us. It's not necessarily nice to a creature that can't breathe oxygen and finds it poisonous, for instance,
I suppose. But,
right? Or a creature that requires a constant temperature of 190 degrees Celsius.
Mm-hmm.
That's all relative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We're certainly the only planet in our neck of the woods that has enough diversity and complexity to maintain life. Most other planets are not very complex. That's something that we need to like Mars
How
is
do
not
you
a very
think that
complex.
happened? The other day I read that the Milky Way galaxy is 110,000 light years across.
Mm-hmm.
And the nearest galaxy, I think it's Andromeda or something, the nearest
Mm-hmm.
galaxy sister or whatever.
Andromeda is a galaxy.
Do you think there are other hospitable planets like Earth in this galaxy, in this
Well,
Milky
absolutely,
Way?
I think so.
And how far apart are they?
Oh,
do you
we
think?
no idea. We will need to find out how to travel faster than light in order to explore this world or this universe. Like, no matter what, like we can get. This is why this is a good time to do a lot of basic scientific research. I know Elon Musk wants to get out there into outer space, but right now we have the equivalent of a bicycle when it comes to going to outer space.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What we need is an internal combustion engine, one that can turn a bicycle into a motorcycle and then potentially later down the road a proper car,
Mm-hmm.
right? What we need is that internal combustion engine. What we need is an engine that can develop enough thrust to propel us to at least light speed, or preferably beyond it if it uses some kind of space folding technology, right? And when I say thrust, I mean propel, not necessarily using thrust, because thrust is a non-starter for star exploration. So
instead of focusing on social media and how to entertain each other, there should be some people who are thinking about the really hard questions.
Well, there are in physics. In physics, there are many people who thought about those questions, but the problem is that there's a lot of people in physics who have staked their entire career on a theory that is becoming more and more obvious that it's nonsense, which is the string theory. Michio Kaku is a very public face of the string theory, but there's other scientists on the back end, far more famous in their field scientists.
They're diehard supporters of the string
They're
theory?
well, they're diehard supporters of it because they kind of tied their entire career to admit right now that
they were
it was
misinformed.
That it was a wrong path.
Yeah.
Would be to basically admit that your entire career was worthless.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't worthless. I think
You've knocked something out that
you proved that something is definitely not it.
Yeah.
You proved that string theory is definitely not the theory that it's going to be, the theory of everything. But we need those people to admit their mistakes, but they don't want to, and they will kick and scream, and they're the ones who control the dollars, and they're the ones who control the grant money, and they're the ones who control the where the direction in which the research goes. So we spent the last, I don't know, some number of years, maybe a decade or two, basically defending string theory instead of trying to figure out what it is, what else it could be.
Well, there's no better time than now to explore a different alternative.
Yeah, there's not that many promising alternatives, but see, I'm not an expert in this field by any stretch of imagination. So there's many different alternatives, but it's hard to say with
Eric Weinstein was offering a different.
Yeah, his thing is not even a theory. Here's the
That's
thing.
incredibly difficult to understand.
Yeah. Okay. So this is actually coming from his brother. So I'm going to quote his brother here, the one who says that it's not even his theory is not a theory. It's not even a hypothesis. Right. It's an
observation.
It's an observation.
Okay.
He has an observation right now.
Yeah.
Eric Weinstein has an observation. He hasn't even worked it enough through to build it into a hypothesis.
Yeah.
So far, he's like me. He went into DMT world and he observed there's bright lights here and they intersect at these kind of angles, right? Now you have to do the theory and then say, and therefore, blah, and here's how we can...
results.
Yeah, and then here's how we can test it. At that point, you will have a hypothesis, right? And then from that hypothesis, you prove that hypothesis, and the more you prove it over and over again, the more it becomes a theory.
Yeah.
That's how scientific method works, give or take. So his theory is still at a observation level. There are some other ones, but none of them have any kind of testable methodology for testing it out. You know how, like with Einstein, when he was basically trying to prove that he's right and that Newton is wrong, right? He had to challenge Newton in order to prove himself right, right? Not challenge him like saying Newton is an idiot, but challenge him as like saying I have a better way of describing the universe than the approximation that we had before. And Einstein's explanation is also an approximation. It's not like dead on. So,
do you think it would be really difficult to design an experiment after you put out a theory about?
Well, it's not about difficulty. It's about whether or not we can test and measure certain things. right? So if Einstein was lucky that there was solar eclipse, and then during that solar eclipse we could observe the deviation in the gravity well of the sun of a star, that we knew how much it usually deviates by, and we could compare it to what it would deviate by, or to where it would basically we would compare where we would expect it to be based on the precession of the Earth versus where it would be, because it would the light from it would pass quite close to the sun, and it would kind of be pulled into the sun's gravitational pull. And Newton's equations predicted one angle of deviation, and Einstein's equations predicted, luckily, a different angle of deviation. Therefore, we could create an experiment whereby we go measure that angle of deviation, and then we know who's right and who's wrong. The problem with string theory is it doesn't predict anything that we can't predict using Einsteinian mathematics or any other any other theories that we have more or less proven, right? Or at least, like the theory of relativity, right? We kind of proved that it's pretty accurate. We can't find any flaws with it, but it just breaks down on a subatomic level. But we can't, the string theory, we can't make any predictions, ones that we can test and say, hey, this one predicted this thing. This theory predicts that thing. Look, this thing, that thing was right. This thing is wrong. We can't do that. And as a result, we don't know. Hey, I don't know if we can cut this. Do you mind if we cut this a little earlier?
No, for sure.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to cut this podcast a little earlier. This was a little weird. Next time we want to talk about how stupid Democrats are. I really wanted to talk about it today because they attacked the NRA right now. And it's a really stupid idea because it's going to galvanize the Republican Party and actually get them to go out and vote. But I'll just leave it right there. Other than that, hope you enjoyed it. And
yeah, I wanted to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, actually.
Did you research it?
This is a perfect opportunity for me
to research it. Yes, yeah. Because it is becoming quite interesting what's happening. Now they're extorting people. Anyways, but of course it's not the Black Lives Matter movement. It's about a bunch of opportunists that run to this kind of situation. Anyways, have an awesome day, everyone, and we will see you
next time.
Soon.
Bye.